On today's episode, we're going to talk about how it started and how it ended with the tight end position coming right up. And what is up, everyone? Welcome to the Gridiron Fantasy Football Podcast for Tuesday, May 11th, 2021. And I am Chip, and I'm your host, and thank you so much for listening today. If you're a new listener, thank you so much for joining us as well. If you'd like to share our podcast, you can find us over on Apple and Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, and Amazon Music. And if you'd like to watch us, you can watch us over on YouTube at Gridiron Fantasy Football. So please do me a favor, hit subscribe, support the show, and so you don't miss any more episodes. And on today's episode, we're going to talk about how it started, how it finished with the tight end position. But before we get into that, let's talk about some of the news that took place on Monday. Now, we're going to start off with the Aaron Rodgers news because this continues to, there's continues to be smoke with this whole entire situation with Aaron Rodgers. And it keeps to be reported that Denver is a legitimate landing spot for Aaron Rodgers. It happened when the draft was here a few weeks ago that they had a lot of compensation they could have given to Green Bay for Aaron Rodgers, but it didn't happen during the draft. So that's yet to determine if it's going to still happen. But it seems like there's just this growing development that Aaron Rodgers is obviously not wanting to come back to Green Bay. There's just this beef between him and the GM. So who knows? But it's one of those things where another report came out on Monday saying that the GM of the Green Bay Packers said that Jordan Love, the first-round draft pick from last year, is nowhere close to being ready to play. He's still in that early in his development, and my question is, why even draft somebody? Usually when you draft a first-round draft pick who's a quarterback, now they overshot for Jordan Love, but, it doesn't make any sense on if you thought that Jordan Love was so far away from actually playing, why do you even draft him and piss off Aaron Rodgers? So it makes no sense to me. I don't understand if something happens where Aaron Rodgers decides to sit out for the season or he gets traded, the Packers are screwed. It screws up from a fantasy standpoint. It screws up Devontae Adams. Could potentially just screw up Aaron Jones. But from a Green Bay Packers as a team, NFL team, we have no idea how good Jordan Love is. There's no tape on him. Because of COVID last year, there's no way to really know how he's developing and if he's improving or not. But it just seems like this story continues to get crazier and crazier. And then on Tuesday, they came out and said that they try to give Aaron Rodgers a significant long-term contract extension. And I think they're just trying to patch up anything that's going to keep him in Green Bay. But for right now, it seems like Aaron Rodgers is pretty adamant that he doesn't want to play in Green Bay anymore. And more stories came out that he told free agents that he wasn't going to come back in 2021. So I don't know what's going on. I just don't understand the situation because this is the same situation that Brett Favre was in when Aaron Rodgers was drafted, when he got drafted. So Brett Favre dealt with it, and it took 4 years for Aaron Rodgers to start. They pushed out Brett Favre. And the situation is a little different here because they want Aaron Rodgers to stay on the team, but they drafted Jordan Love to be the person that takes over after Aaron Rodgers is, retired. So I don't understand the reasoning. Maybe there's some logistical reasons why Aaron Rodgers is mad about it, but the same thing happened with Tampa Bay in the draft. They drafted Kyle Trask from Florida with their second round pick, but I think the difference is they told Tom Brady that you can play as long as you want to play in Tampa, but we're going to draft somebody, we're going to develop somebody just in case. So maybe it's just the communication between the team and the player. And that's why Aaron Rodgers is a little bit pissed off. But I don't know. I think every smart team needs to develop somebody behind their starter, especially when they're an age like Aaron Rodgers is. He's 37, So I think it made sense. But I think there's more to it that we just don't know. And it's becoming fascinating to see exactly where he ends up, if he's gonna play in Denver or he doesn't play at all. But still very interesting to me. And then another big story that came out on Monday is the Jacksonville Jaguars plan to sign Tim Tebow to a 1-year contract. Now, it's very interesting to see this happen because Tim Tebow, I think that he is a very gifted athlete. And when he came into the league, look, the Denver Broncos drafted him with the first-round pick. Josh McDaniels was the head coach when they drafted Tim Tebow. They thought he was warranted of a first-round pick. But as you saw him play more NFL quarterback when he started playing more as an NFL quarterback, you saw more of his flaws. He wasn't developing, he wasn't progressing. But then now you look at, if he had switched to a tight end position, which they wanted him to do all along, Tim Tebow could still be in the league as of today. But he took this long, he wanted to stay as a quarterback. He felt like he was a quarterback. He didn't want to switch positions. He got pushed out of the league. Then he went to go play baseball, and then now they're bringing him back as a tight end. And it's one of those, catch-22s. I think that a lot of people are mad about the fact that certain players are not into the league anymore, that got pushed out of the league, which, I understand, like, there's the Colin Kaepernicks and people that got pushed out of the league that are talented enough and should be in the league. But I think the difference is that Tim Tebow is playing for a coach that he played for in college, but also he's switching positions. He's not going to be anywhere close to competing with Trevor Lawrence. So I don't know. I think you can argue both sides of the coin there, but just interesting to see somebody like Tim Tebow, who's 33 years old, come in and try to make an NFL roster as a tight end. And who knows what he looks like athletically? Who knows if he's fluent with his movements? Who knows how he is with running routes? I mean, you got to think, he's older than Rob Gronkowski and Travis Kelce, so it's one of those things where it's the wait-and-see process. But going on to the Colts signed Eric Fisher to a one-year deal worth $9.4 million. And now they obviously is good for them to get a left tackle that's a Pro Bowler and everything, but he's still coming off an Achilles injury, which Ian Rappaport of NFL Network said that he won't play until October, which all the patients I've seen with Achilles ruptures, this is typical. Usually takes a calendar year for the player to get back to full strength, but as of right now, it's a good signing, but it's a signing that you won't be able to see until October. So moving on to the Falcons. So the running backs coach, Desmond Kitchen, said that when it comes to the running back room, it's the door is wide open for any running back to start. And obviously they signed Mike Davis from Carolina. So the person in that running back room who will be probably the starter for the Falcons will be Mike Davis. Now you got to think they have 364 carries unaccounted for this year. So I think, and which that leads the league. So I think that whoever gets the starting role for the Atlanta Falcons, which we're assuming is Mike Davis, I think is a very good sleeper for this year, because when it comes to running back, when it comes to fantasy running backs, you want to make sure you have somebody who has the opportunity to do well because of having carries and everything like that. So I think this is good news for Mike Davis, because he's the most talented running back on that roster. So I think that's a name that you should probably want to highlight as a sleeper this year. And then this is kind of crazy though, like you saw this on Sunday, but DK Metcalf, he ran in the Olympic trials for the Olympics this year, and he didn't qualify. He came in 9th place, but he ran a 10.36 time. So I mean, it's crazy for a guy who's that size to run that fast, and at least he didn't come in last. I mean, but it's one of those things where, unless 9th was last place, I didn't check how many, if there was 10 runners or not. But the fact of the matter is that this is a guy who's a massive human being who shouldn't be able to move like that, going against guys who train for being a track athlete every single day, and he trains as an NFL athlete, as obviously. But I don't know, it's one of those things where it's crazy to see. I'm sure that if he continues to practice that and train, he'll be able to at least qualify, because he didn't. I think the qualification is like 10.06 seconds, and he was 10.36 seconds, so he wasn't too far off. So I think like he'll work at it and still get there. But that's the NFL news as of right now, as of Tuesday. And then I'm gonna move on to some of the things that I saw some interesting things over the weekend, and I think the one thing is that I know that we had the draft a few weeks ago, and I think a lot of the things that I don't understand is when a lot of people put so much time and effort in giving out NFL draft grades, post-draft grades. Like, I just don't understand why put up so much time. I understand, like, from a fantasy football standpoint, where there's a player that's going to be significant in fantasy, and why certain locations will, increase his draft stock or decrease it. But I don't understand when they put so much effort in putting draft grades on every single team when we have no idea what the hell's going on with these teams and these players. Like, there's so many first-round picks that are going to be busts. There's going to be so many fifth-round picks that are going to be all-pros and Super Bowl winners. Like, I understand it's for information. It's people figuring out exactly how a team improved and all that stuff. I get all that, but I always look at the draft grades. I never pay attention to any of this stuff, because how they're going to know how Kyle Trask does for Tampa Bay Bucks, how he's going to do, when he may not play for 3 or 4 years and grade that. Or someone like Trey Lance, for instance, like he probably won't start right away, but they're going to, because of how talented he is and the potential of him, they're going to give the 49ers a good draft grade because of that. I don't know. I don't get it. I think it's a waste of time, but that's my own perspective. Maybe that's just a adverse opinion, but I just don't get it. And then when it comes to actually a graphic I saw on, I think it was on Sunday, where they put a graphic for the Ohio State Buckeyes, and I didn't realize that they never had a Pro Bowl quarterback in the NFL. And all the talented quarterbacks they had in that school, and not to realize they had no starting quarterback, from the Ohio State Buckeyes that played in the NFL and did anything. So, and then you combine that with the Bears, who have never developed a franchise quarterback, and Ohio State Buckeyes, who never had a Pro Bowl quarterback. It seems like, is he going to be the anomaly of Ohio State, quarterbacks? Because it's almost like you look at what happened with the Oregon Ducks. Like the Oregon Ducks always have talented players, but then you look at who's really come from Oregon and actually did well in the NFL. And the only person I can think of was Dan Fouts. Dan Fouts was he's a Hall of Fame quarterback. But you look at Joey Harrington, he was one of the top quarterbacks in the Pac-12 and in the whole college football ranks, and he did nothing in the NFL. Marcus Mariota, he's talented, but the potential there just wasn't what we expected for a number 2 overall pick. But we look at Justin Herbert. So Justin Herbert is the anomaly, right? So he comes in with the Los Angeles Chargers, and he has a great rookie season. He looks like he's here for the long haul. He looks like a superstar. So I guess there's potential there. There's a potential if Justin Fields can be the Justin Herbert of this year, and those two can develop as the anomalies of their teams that they came from in college and be stars in the NFL. I mean, that's gonna be great. But it was just interesting to see that graphic on Ohio State Buckeyes and their history of quarterbacks going into the NFL and how much they succeed. But with that being the case, let's go ahead and move on to the top tight ends of this year, and then. We've been doing this series for a few weeks now, and how they started, how they finished. And what I usually do is I go through what the average draft position was for the top 12 tight ends and compare that to who ended the season in the top 12. And tight end is, welcome to the most volatile position in fantasy football. It's the hardest one to judge. We know we have the Travis Kelce's and the George Kittles and all that stuff and the Darren Wallers, but it's very hard to determine year in and year out. If you don't get one of those top 2 or 3 guys, it's a crapshoot. So, I mean, based on the average draft position from last season, right, we have Travis Kelce obviously he was the number 1 tight end off the board. He's generally a second-round pick based on your league size and all that stuff. And you had George Kittle was 2nd, Mark Andrews was 3rd, Zach Ertz was 4th, Darren Waller was 5, Rob Gronkowski was 6, Evan Ingram was 7, Hayden Hurst was 8, Tyler Higbee was 9, Hunter Henry was 10, Jared Cook was 11, and then Noah Fant was 12th. And honestly, there's a couple guys in here that Rob Gronkowski seemed to be a little on the high side. I think he was overdrafted. But you look at how he finished, it wasn't, hindsight's 2020. But Tyler Higbee was one guy that I chose last year as a sleeper based on opportunity, and it just didn't end up that way. Jared Cook, he wasn't very good last year. But looking at how they finished, Travis Kelce was the number 1 tight end. He finished as the number 1 tight end. I mean, the guy was a monster. I mean, he had 312 PPR points. I mean, if you look at how much, Travis Kelce had 312 PPR points, and then the Hunter Henry was still a tight end 1. He had 145.3. So a massive difference between having a top tight end and having a lower end tight end. But obviously, when you get somebody like Travis Kelce in your draft, you're paying a premium for him. But also, that means you're not having another running back or another wide receiver. So it depends on how you're able to structure your draft. You're able to make good trades, picking up free agents, all that stuff. But it's just one of those things where if you listen to the rest of the list of who is in the top 12, these are names that you never expected. I mean, Darren Waller, he was 2nd. Logan Thomas was 3rd. Which he's a guy that kind of blew up last year and kind of was an under-the-radar guy. Robert Tonyan from the Green Bay Packers, massive season from him. T.J. Hawkinson, he had a good season. Mark Andrews was 6th. Mike Gesicki was 7th. Rob Gronkowski was 8th, so he was drafted the 6th overall tight end. He finished the season in the 8th position. Noah Fant was 9th. Hayden Hurst was 10th. Dalton Schultz was the tight end so Blake Jarwin was the starting tight end for the Dallas Cowboys. He got injured, so Dalton Schultz was the one who replaced him. He ended up with being 11, and then Hunter Henry was 12th. So if you look at that, Travis Kelce had 145 targets, 105 receptions for 1,400 yards and 11 touchdowns. That's crazy for a tight end, but he is the best tight end in the league. And I know there's the one name that you didn't hear, and that's George Kittle. But George Kittle, he ended up in the season at 19th, and he only had 8 games that he played, so he was injured for the majority of the season. But if you look at who was drafted, based on their average draft position last year compared to how they finished, it was a crapshoot. Tight end was garbage last year, unless you had Travis Kelce and Darren Waller. But it's a lot of names that will be, top tight ends this year that will be drafted, like every year has happened. So you'll see Logan Thomas being a top tight end taken, behind the main guys. Then you'll have like Robert Tonyan. Now, Robert Tonyan, he had 11 touchdowns. He was second in the league behind Travis Kelce. But here's the difference. He had 52 receptions for 586 yards. So even though he had the same amount of touchdowns as Travis Kelce, he was volatile at times. It was just one of those things where that's how the tight end position is. It really makes your roster a lot better when you have someone consistent that you can plug in there. But like I said, it's taken away from another position that you may not be as strong as. So, and it all depends on how good you are with drafting. So you can get by with the Travis Kelce, and if you're somebody who's able to draft Justin Jefferson, and you had like a Tyreek Hill or someone else on your roster that was a top receiver, you made out pretty well, and your team was probably pretty solid. But it's one of those things where tight end, that's one of the positions that I just pay in my auction league. I try to pay $1 or $2 for. I don't go high after tight ends. I think I had Hayden Hurst last year for a little bit, and then I was able to get Noah Fant, so I would swap the two out based on matchups. But it's just a position that's not very consistent. So now let's look into how consistent these tight ends were last year. Now, based on the 12 tight ends that I mentioned that finished in the top 12, this is how many weeks they finished as a tight end 1. So look at Travis Kelce, 14 out of 16 weeks he was a tight end 1, which was the most consistent tight end we've had last season. Darren Waller had 9 weeks he was a tight end 1. Logan Thomas had 8. Robert Tonyan had 8. TJ Hawkinson had 8. Mark Andrews had 8. Mike Gesicki had 4. Rob Gronkowski had 7. Noah Fant had 4. Hayden Hurst had 8. Dalton Schultz had 4. And Hunter Henry had 7. So looking at that, I'm actually kind of surprised that Robert Tonyan had 8 weeks as a tight end 1. Logan Thomas, that's how volatile this position is. Like, one of the weeks, I can't remember, it was like week 10 or week 11, to qualify for being a tight end 1 for that week, the tight end scored like 8.3 fantasy PPR points. Like, that's pretty bad, right? So when a tight end 1 gets a couple receptions and for a few yards, but gets 8 points, and then that's considered a tight end 1, that's just a massive drop off of what a Travis Kelce can do and a Darren Waller can do compared to that. So it's one of those things where tight end, it's a very hard position to figure out, because there's a certain prime age that these tight ends usually come into their own, which is usually around 25, 26 years old. And it all depends on the situation. And you got, think about this year with the New England Patriots. You got Jonnu Smith, when we saw him sign with the New England Patriots, like, okay, that's going to be easy tight end 1 pick for 2021. But then they go off and they pick up Hunter Henry. And now we've seen the Patriots have support 2 tight end 1s when they had Aaron Hernandez and Rob Gronkowski. And that's kind of what they're probably trying to do with their offense, because that's why their offense was so successful for so many years, because they had so many mismatches up the seam with their tight end position. But if you look at this list, if you didn't have Travis Kelce or Darren Waller, how was the tight end position for you though? Like, who did you have? Because do you feel like the tight end that you had actually helped you win? Was it just you're playing musical chairs trying to find the best tight end? Because most teams in your fantasy leagues will only carry 1 tight end unless you have 2 really good tight ends that you're just trying to keep from your other teammates or your league mates. But it's just one of those things where we're getting to the point where, like, even my league is talking about getting rid of tight ends. And so what is your league doing? Is your league trying to keep your tight end position? Is your league trying to, like, what are some of the changes that are being made? Because, I actually liked having the tight end. I'm the one who's always going to vote for having a tight end. I think that's the challenging part of it. You don't, like, if you don't have Travis Kelce or George Kittle or somebody like that, it makes it more challenging where you need to really, really do your homework on guys that could possibly do well. And then guys who do break out, there's going to be times where a tight end will break out for 1 week. You pay all your fab for them, and then they do nothing the rest of the year. I mean, that's the interesting thing and the fun thing about fantasy football is allowing yourself to be able to make those right calls and find guys that are diamonds in the rough that actually will do well for your team, because nobody drafted Logan Thomas last year, Robert Tonyan. Let's see, Dalton Schultz obviously was a waiver wire pickup. Hayden Hurst and like Tyler Higbee were two of my sleepers, and like I said, Hayden Hurst, I mean, he didn't do bad. He was still a tight end 1. He finished at fantasy tight end 1, but now his value is down because Kyle Pitts is now in Atlanta. So just a very interesting just revolving door when it comes to tight ends and who's going to be up there this year. Because I mean, if you look at kind of how they have them right now for 2021, is that they have still Travis Kelce is the number one guy. I mean, you got Travis Kelce is 1, George Kittle's 2, Darren Waller's 3, Mark Andrews 4. So those are like your typical top tight ends that were going to be from last year to this year. And then TJ Hawks is up there at 5, Nolan Fant. There's Hunter Henry, which is interesting to have Hunter Henry above Jonnu Smith, but he has more of a track record for being a good tight end. Logan Thomas is there, Evan Ingram, Robert Gronkowski. So, it just depends on based on how your league's set up. Now this is just based on right now early rankings, and there doesn't really mean that this is the final rankings, but it's just something to look at as one reference I'm looking at. So it's one of those things where from a fantasy analyst and a fantasy player, I would just stay away from tight end. I would stay away from getting somebody and using so much draft equity on a tight end. If you can't get a Kelce or a Waller or a George Kittle, you got to weigh out the options. Who are you giving up to get those guys? And then can you just find a guy you can plug in, because you're going to find some diamonds in the rough next year. So that's it for the tight end position. And let me know what you think. Let me know if there's some details that when you look at a tight end position, do you try to go for that Travis Kelce, or do you try to use your skills as a fantasy player to find those diamonds in the rough? Because everyone has their own different strategies. But I appreciate you guys listening today. Now, like I said, don't forget to send all your fantasy football questions to chip@gridironfantasyfootball.com. Now, I'll always leave the email down in the description on the YouTube channel, so if you want to hit me up on the email, go for it. If you want to follow us on Instagram, we're at Gridiron Fantasy Football. If you want to find us over on Twitter and Facebook, we're at the Gridiron Pod. But that's it for today. So please like, comment, share this with anybody that you know that'll be interested, and please hit subscribe. And then on the next episode, I'm start going to my early rankings for 2021. Now that we have to draft, and now I've done this series, now I'm gonna start doing the rankings. I'll be doing a ranking show next week, start with the quarterback position. So make sure you don't miss that. So until then, thank you for listening, and we'll see you all in the next episode. Take care.